Okie dokie. We have 2 chapters to cover today. And next week, 2 more, and then we're done with all the chapters, and it's nothing but prep for the Security Plus exam. Chapter 14 is all about incident response. No matter how hard you make your security protections, something will go wrong. So you have to have a process of looking for and responding to when things go south. This is your typical incident response process, where in preparation, you build your tools, your processes, procedures to respond to an incident. You build your IR team, you conduct your exercises, you document what's going to be done, who's going to respond, that kind of stuff. In identification, you're looking at events to identify incidents, like looking at logs, indicators of compromise, looking at tools. In containment is when we're responding to an incident. In eradication, we remove any artifacts associated. We rebuild and restore whatever system was affected. In recovery, we restore back to normal, bringing the system or the services back online, and also fixing any weaknesses or flaws that allowed the incident to occur in the first place. And lesson 6 is the lessons learned, so that we don't make the same mistakes again. This informs the repeat of the cycle. I jumped one more. I jumped one more. In your team, in your incident response team, you have management, because they have to make decisions for the whole team. You have the IT security staff. You have tech experts. You have PR, public relations. You have human resources and legal, and law enforcement, depending on the situation. This is just a small group of people that should exist in your team. This team should regularly practice, because incidents will happen. You know, it's not a matter of if, it's always a matter of when. So there should be exercises to practice when a incident occurs, either in tabletop exercises, in walkthroughs, or even simulations. Your plan should have everybody who needs to be involved. Like who's going to communicate to the press, and what are they going to say? Who's going to communicate to stakeholders? How is the business going to keep on going? If it's a certain disaster, do we need to contact FEMA? That kind of stuff. This whole thing should be written as a policy. It should have all the steps that are going to be taken, who has the authority to do what. It should all be written down, because you don't want to try to figure it out during an incident. It's always the worst, because that's just chaotic. And you don't want any of that. You want to have an up-to-date policy that's clear on who's doing what, where, when. MITRE has a very awesome framework that'll help you identify the type of attack and what's happening and what's related to. It's in the lecture notes. Check it out, read through it. It's pretty awesome. Now just think of this for identifying attacks. As I've said before, all it really takes is the attackers to win once. Us as defenders have to win every time. I like this one in the bottom left. Defenders live in standards and frameworks. Attackers live in real time with motivation. It's also not wrong that attackers put their time into knowing the devices and networks better than their defenders. This here is the MITRE ATT&CK framework that I was mentioning earlier. It has about 17, 18 different techniques broken down into sub-techniques within them. This helps clearly identify for us as defenders what's happening. It helps to put information down with the action. This is something that we can use to communicate to other folks who don't understand security. Another way of helping those who are not technical, understand the technical, is the diamond model of intrusion analysis. It's all about the sequence of events and understanding the attacker's motivators and the relationship between different elements. Oops. This is the cyber kill chain. It comes from Lockheed Martin. Similarly, it's all about writing out at what step what's happening, so that again you put to words the things that are happening. Because as I said, you have your incident response team is going to be made up of technical and non-technical people. Your PR is going to be talking to non-technical folks. They need to have a nice, clear way of expressing what's happening. Using these models helps. This is one of many, but one of the best security information and event management systems, or SIEM. They can take information from anywhere, from logs, from tools, from raw data from IoT. They can take in a lot of data and format it in a way that's easy to search, easy to quantify, easy to run reports on, and so on. Different teams have different capabilities. Splunk is one of the best. It's also expensive, but its capabilities are quite wide and very, very useful. Having log files can be a daunting task. Log files are not generally something you can pick up and read while baking in the sun, getting a nice tan. They're very boring. But that's where tools like SIEMs come in, who can take these and process them into something that is understandable, is readable, that you can make charts and graphs and alerts and so on, that will be beneficial to not only you, but everybody else on your team and everybody else who is and isn't technical. Metadata data of data, can also be used in incident response. Security Plus focuses on 4 types. That is like the email headers, in mobile, things like call logs, MMS, GPS tracking. In web, things like meta tags, headers, cookies, and file, like EXIF tools that get information out of things like pictures, for example. A playbook is a step-by-step guide intended to help teams take the right actions in a given scenario. This is all to help when panic sets in. Before things go south, you want to have things written down, like what regulations we have to follow, what laws we have to follow, what those laws say that we need to do. That way, when things go wrong, we already can look at these playbooks and see what we need to do to respond. We have to have in those playbooks things like containment, mitigation, and recovery. What steps are you going to do in what order to contain an incident? Is step 1 you walk up to the system and pull it from the wall? Probably not. So what is your first step? What is your second step? You write everything down ahead of time. You practice it. Because an incident will occur. But as long as you have these playbooks ready, you can quickly respond in an effective manner and not worry that you missed something because you took the time to write everything down, to think about it, to walk it through. And when that incident occurs, you're good to go. And that could be everything from isolation, containment, segmentation, recording any firewall changes, filterings, all kinds of stuff. As long as you have everything written down, when disaster strikes, you'll be fine. Any questions before moving on to chapter 15? Okay. Chapter 15 deals with the other half of DFIR. They are the siblings. Digital forensics is the sibling to incident response. Digital forensics is the process of documenting everything in the mindset that it's going to be used in court. In digital forensics, we are capturing evidence, we are analyzing information, and we are preparing it together for the legal system. Whereas with incident response, we are moving quickly to answer the call that something happened. In digital forensics, we are much more methodical. We write everything down. We have chain of custody. Everything that we do has to be repeatable by somebody else. Digital forensics begins when litigation is pending or anticipated. Legal counsel sends a legal or litigation hold. a notice that informs an organization or person they must preserve data and records that might be destroyed or modified in the course of operations. So things like backups, paper documents, electronic files have to be preserved. This opens the e-discovery process, the electronic discovery process, where we get information, we identify, we preserve, we collect, process, we review, we analyze, and we have the presentation. Acquiring digital forensic data goes from the most volatile down. Things that are in the CPU cache, things that are in routing tables in RAM, those are the fastest to change. We need to capture those first. Moving on down to data on the hard disk to backups. We need to capture everything as much as we can. We have to maintain chain of custody. We track where evidence goes, who it's transferred to, who handled it. Evidence in court is legally admissible if it's offered to prove the facts of a case and doesn't violate the law. Admissibility for digital forensics requires that data be intact or unaltered before and during the forensic process. All analysts have to be able to demonstrate they have the appropriate skills, use the appropriate tools and techniques. They documented their actions in a reliable and attestable manner. Digital forensics is a science. There is cloud forensics. There's right to audit clauses in contracts between cloud service and organizations. There's regulatory and jurisdiction that has to be thought about, because you may have data that is being written out in a whole different state. Like for us, for example, the cheapest data center that we're all using is the central one, but we're in California. So if Google is trying to figure out, or the law is trying to figure out what happened, they would need to get the proper rights, the proper subpoenas from the Google data center in the middle of the country, rather than getting the one that's here. Having the right tools is important. And Security Plus focuses on a few. On DD, the Linux command line tool, FTK Imager, which is free, WinHex, memdump, and volatility. I suggest playing with those tools in TryHackMe, for example, to get at least an understanding of how to use the tool. Being able to capture data on the network is important, because it's not just about what happened on the disk, it's how did it get on the disk, what was transferred out. So being able to have things like network taps or span ports or port mirrors to capture that data and then be able to see it again is important. Let's not forget that we can get data from other sources, because there are many sources, not just desktops, not just laptops, not just the Raspberry Pis that are sitting around. We also have IoT devices. We have virtual machines and containers. All devices create data. All devices create some form of information that can be put together to be used in a case. So you have to think about those and add them into our calculus when we begin an investigation. When you are capturing information, like say an image of a hard drive or an image of an SD card, you have to ensure integrity is kept the whole time. That the file used is a legitimate copy, a bit-for-bit copy of the source, unaltered. You have to provide hashes. You have to prove that it was not altered in any way, shape, or form. When it comes to recovering data as part of a digital forensics investigation, Security Plus focuses on the tool Autopsy, which is free. It does also mention FTK from Access Data and NCase from Guidance Software, but Security Plus tends to focus more on the free tool Autopsy and its capabilities to bring out information even if it was deleted. Lastly, your digital forensics report is a very big deal. Those are what's used in the court. Those show every step you took, how you found what you found, your credentials, all kinds of very valuable information that is used in the court. For this class, you don't have to worry about that. If you are taking or have taken or will be taking my forensics class, that is a very big part of the course, is writing reports. And we can't really leave out intelligence. Forensics plays a strategic intelligence and counterintelligence effort, such as analyzing adversary actions or getting information through counterintelligence. The same tools that are used for digital forensics are also used for malicious reasons. It's all about how you use the tool. So as always, you have to be above board. You have to be ethical. You can't just throw caution to the wind. Are there any questions? Your work this week is not insane. You are to complete 3 Try Hack Me rooms. Again, I suggest some of the tools that are mentioned in the lecture notes, do a room on them. Get familiar with them because they're going to show up on the test. I've seen them time and time again. You don't have to be an expert in the tool. You don't have to know it inside out. You just need to know what it does, how it works. Have a good understanding of it. So when you see a question about it, it doesn't scare you. So with that, I'll stick around